For your scene's ground elevation, there are a couple different sources for your ground elevation. It can be an Esri web map, so the default will use the world elevation data set. You can search for different Esri elevation data sets if you wanted to. You also have the option of using a custom surface that you might pull. Maybe you have local LiDAR data or DEM that you've created from that LiDAR data that is more specific or more detailed than the Esri data. To include that data, we are going to click on Add Data, add an elevation source to the ground. And this data set that we're adding, I'm just adding a 30-meter DEM because that's what I have available. This elevation source that we're adding is going to be where we're basing our layers from, where we're basing that zero elevation from. So we won't necessarily see that DEM added. It is just being draped, our 2D topographic layer is just being draped over our DEM. So if we wanted to see it, we could go under our appearance and we can zoom out and kind of see it is present, even though we're not seeing it right now, because it's just being used as that source for where we're getting our height elevation data from. Turn this off. You can set your vertical exaggerations here if you wanted to, but now we can say, okay, once this draws again, we can talk about our symbology for our trees. We can change the elevation surface that we're using. So we can click on our trees, we can go under symbology, it'll bring up the symbology tab. We could change this to a 3D symbol if we wanted to. I'm just going to keep it simple for right now. Keep it as a 2D symbol. We'll see how it turns into a 3D symbol. And then I'm going to vary the size of these symbols. Right now we're going to vary it based on height. So not quite right, but height of that tree. So we'll let it draw. And we can see, as we navigate our scene, we now have these points for our trees that are, using the start of the elevation surface as our DEM layer instead of the elevation data. It's likely in this scenario they would be the same anyway because this is 30-meter data. But if you know you have that LiDAR data, it might be something worth including, or if you're working on a much smaller area and want more detailed data. So that is how you can add a custom elevation surface. You can also add it through here. So I right-clicked on elevation, add elevation sources. I'll add that 30-meter, that same 30-meter DEM. Let's go on properties and rename this one so I know which one it is. You could, if you wanted to, when we are looking at, this is what I was looking for. So you can tell it which elevation surface you want it to use. So we have the ground, we have two different ground surfaces. You have this other surface here. I just double clicked on my trees. I'm going to go on the ground. You can note here that we have this custom elevation surface. So this is the surface that is not the ground, such as where well sites intersect at the top of the geologic body. But this might be something like, gosh, I can't think of any examples. But maybe you knew that the site was, you were building like a 2-meter platform to do all the building on it. You could add that in. So we could put that on surface 1. So this is our 3D elevation grid. Now we're actually changing it. I don't think it's going to change how it draws that much because it's the same data set. But as we zoom in, sometimes if we do, if this had, let's say this DEM was Oh, it is floating a little bit. So you can see that they're floating. Let's change it back and see what happens. So this is relative to the ground, which is going to be our DEM, or if we had this one checked and this one checked, it'd be the other one. Let's see if they move. Drawing. Let's see, why is it not drawing? Okay, so let's go back. So I had to change, since we were scrolled all the way down here, I just set it as relative to the ground. It should be on the ground. I did add that cartographic offset when I was playing around with it, so let's get rid of that. Let it redraw. And then if we come over, come on, here. Let's see, are we still... These don't seem to be off the ground like the other ones were. So yeah, see, these are attached to the surface. I wonder if we go back, this is super exciting for you. Now we know what I did wrong. I wonder if I had a cartographic offset for that one. Okay, so that's really interesting. If we use this as a surface, it is giving us a little bit of an offset that I have to look into why it's causing that offset. But if we use it as the ground, there is no offset. I wonder what else that could be. Anyway. So something to think about, but I came up with another example of when you might want to use a surface offset. Let's say it was below ground, like you were doing pipelines or something, and you knew that the pipeline started 30 feet below ground or something. You could do it that way. Okay, so that's how you can add your custom ground elevation, or if you wanted to add in a surface, you could do that as well.